guys, I'm here. Facebook's giving us a little trouble, so I'll be right back.
Hi there, and welcome to Friday Night Flock Talk. I'm Robin Sullivan of the Leather Elves. Caught me off guard. I hope you all everybody hung in, because tonight's going to be a lot of fun. The usual, just a little bit of announcements to start with. You can like the Leather Elves on Facebook. That way you get notifications, and you can check our Facebook page for surprise sales, pop-up events. I'm going to be doing some just educational pieces that'll be coming up on the Leather Elves. So definitely like and follow us. You can also follow us on Instagram, and you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. So lots going on. We are still, so this says that it's only through, you could sign up through February 14th, but I have extended that. This is 6 weeks, 6 webinars, $100, so less than $20 a session. It's a small group, which is kind of nice. We're going to begin on March 6th. So this weekend will be the last chance to sign up at theletherelves.equid.com. So, thank you to Nick, as always. I know Facebook was being ornery tonight, which happens sometimes. And thank you guys for hanging in. So tonight, I am lucky enough to have 2 guests with me. And they're people who most of you, a lot of you know, those of us that know them, love them, Dr. Donald Brightsmith and Dr. Gabriela Vigo-Trauco. And there they are. Hello.
Good evening.
So I'm going to refer to you as Dr. Don and Dr. Gabby because that's way easier. And when I introduce you as, Donald and Gabriela, people go, wait, who? Because you are wonderfully approachable with what you do. So do you guys want to do a really quick introduction, bio background, or it's up to you?
Sure.
All right.
Sure, I'll start out. I'm Dr. Don Brightsmith. I've been working on parrots for a very, very long time. Just counted them up. There's about 80 different scientific publications on parrots that we've done through my lab group now. Professor at Texas A&M University, working in southeastern Peru, where I met Dr. Gabby Vigo.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Gabby Vigo. I'm a postdoc in Texas A&M too, part of the Schubert Center. I study macaw behavior and macaw reproductive ecology in Peru. I've been a parrot owner since I can recollect, since I was 4 or 5 years old. So you can see that we have one now as part of our family too. So I've been studying parrots in Peru since 2004. So it's been a long time doing this research.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
when I met Dawn, he didn't have the white here, and I didn't have as much white here. So, you're still looking good. I don't know what's Gabby's secret. We need to. That might be a whole nother session.
There we go.
So tonight, there's a lot to talk about. So I want to get started. So the Macaw Society. Tell our listeners what that is and how, at Texas A&M and what you guys do.
You go,
Go
Doug.
ahead, Gabby.
Okay, so we are a group of researchers that is trying to build up that bridge in between science and regular people. So we are studying them in the wild, getting a lot of information, getting publications about it, and we actually want to try to do something with it beyond the publication. So we are working with local governments to trying to implement management techniques using that information and training the next generation of researchers and conservationists that actually like to work with parrots, which means living in hard conditions, not getting the best salaries, and all these type of things that so you're doing what you love, but you are not actually living like in a palace of things like that. And so that's pretty much it. So our main goal is to educate the regular public with scientific information that is backed with real data.
And that's why we're here. And it's Gabby's idea to create the Macaw Society is something a little bit broader than what we've been doing before. And we started around in 2020, right as the pandemic hit, and have been rocking and rolling since then.
Yeah, and I think it's really important what you guys are doing, because that connection, and there is such an opportunity to have that connection, because we have parrots in our homes, and they're not too far removed from the parrots that you're encountering in the wild, and that connection doesn't happen with all pets. And I think people need to know the science behind it, so that they know why we're doing what we're doing and why you're doing what you're doing, and how those two passions come together. And I think the fact that you are both so approachable and you make yourselves available to people to talk about this, and to work with you, I think that's really, really amazing. So, all right, so you're not living in the palace in Peru. We know that. I hate to tell you guys, but nothing in the parrot industry allows you to live in a palace. It's hopeless. People think I have the giant factory and all the elves working for me, and that's not true either. So I don't have to climb trees. I just have to cut them down. So there is that. So what's the work? So you guys split your time between Texas A&M and being in the field, am I right? Yeah.
Mostly
Yes.
here in Texas, but yes, we spend as much time as we can down there.
Okay.
Yeah, it was
So
kind of a transition. When we were younger, it was pretty much half and a half. And then we actually had our very own chick, so the situation changed. When she was little, we took her with us to the field too. And now that she's getting bigger and she has to study and do more things, we pretty much go to the field the 4 main weeks of the breeding season, at the peak time of the breeding season. In the past, is you used to stay there like for 4 months, right?
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, life changes, and you know, fortunately or unfortunately, um, we kind of have to adapt. So so you have teams on the ground who are doing work when you're not there?
Yep, that's Gabby's full-time job is keeping those crews in check and recruiting volunteers, getting them down there, supervising, and making sure the day to day is functioning while I'm at A&M trying to be a full-time professor. So
Okay.
Yeah, so we have
Um,
a second generation of volunteers. So our volunteers from the 2000s are now coming back to be our leaders. So they finish up their careers. We managed to keep to kind of like bewitch some of them that they kept studying tropical forests and birds and parrots, and some of them are coming back willing to work with parrots and living in a nut palace in the rainforest.
so are you, I remember last time we talked that you were talking about um, populations of parrots that were, in urban situations, and we were talking about. So, the people? Are you working with humans on the ground as well, in Peru, doing that education?
So most of what we're doing in Peru is the field science. A lot of the
Hmm.
education is up here, but whenever we get the chance, there are virtual events and some in-person events, and we'll send our either log in ourselves or send some of our people to help get out into the local community in the city of Puerto Maldonado. And we do have some local people that we're working with who are also taking our message out into the communities around the areas where we work.
Hmm.
Yeah, and our big impact with people around is the clay licks. So the Tambopata Reserve, the main attraction is the activity in the clay licks. So the clay lick is a big cliff right next to the river, and hundreds of macaws and parrots go every morning and during the day to eat the soil there, and hundreds of tourists go there to watch that too. So because we have the expertise that we've been monitoring those cliffs for decades, we were able to actually give real advice to the government how to regulate the activity and to help the local guys to treat the resource in a better way. And it's a really
Hmm.
interesting and kind of like comforting situation, because now the local people, they know that it's a situation kind of like that. How do you say this? La gallina de los huevos de oro, Dom. So
It's
it's
the
the
Yeah, it's the super valuable treasure that they have. But if they keep messing it up, they're going to lose the goose that laid the golden egg.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's a challenge that a lot of researchers face, is that for so long, people, profited and made money from the natural popular or the indigenous populations, and then they were depleted, and people didn't understand that connection, that if you're going to work with these birds, you're going to benefit from their existence. The populations have to survive. And so I think that's a challenge that does happen. So nest work, the what kind of things are you doing? So this is kind of exciting work that you guys are working on right now.
So I'll start. I'll admit Gabby is our nest expert, and she'll fill in all the parts that I missed. But when I first went down to southeastern Peru in 1999, 2000, I went down to start looking at macaw nesting. And ever since then, we've been climbing up to nests, weighing and measuring chicks, keeping a mixture of artificial and natural nests under surveillance. We've looked at them using video cameras, using climbers. There's all sorts of pictures online of us working in different ways with nests. And over time, we've also collected a lot of samples, both a mixture of blood and feathers from adults and chicks, whenever we could would get whatever we could get to. Gabby, what did you do your doctoral dissertation on?
It was breeding, breeding ecology and behavior. And the behavior was the much more labor intensive part because it's actually trying to make the video cameras work in the rainforest conditions and then training people to actually take the data to make it publishable. So it's not just like you
Mhm.
watch one pair and you say something about one pair. So we had data of 10 years, like 40 something different pairs, many repetitions trying to actually understand how they are taking care of the chicks, what they are doing, if they are using the same cavities, if they are changing mates, well, what are they doing and how can we use that to help them survive in the long term. So that was a really interesting part of my dissertation, especially because I needed extra hands. And our team of volunteers was 20 plus, so we ended up being like 25, counting our vets and leaders. And it was a big challenge. So behavioral
Mhm.
data, you need to actually make sure that is seeing the same thing. You know, that for
Mhm.
me is red, but for the other one is light red, and for the other one is not that much red. So everything needs to be in a standard situation. And it was interesting. The big debates about how to take the data, big different things, because the observing the nest is nice, but if you are good, that's pretty much the only thing you're gonna be sent to do. And at some point it was, but why you are punishing me? Why I'm doing this again for some volunteers? It's because you're really good at this.
That's one of
That's
the things. It's when you talk about it's light red, it's dark red, and that's one of the challenges with behavior science here, in human care is I may use one term for something that I see, and somebody else who's observing the behavior may use some other term. And Dr. Susan Friedman and I have had this conversation numerous times about whether a companion parrot owner needs to know the science. And if we're all going to speak the same language, I'm not going to be upset if you don't use the precise term, but in order for me to know what you're describing, it has to be clear. And I can't even imagine with a team of 25 trying to get everybody, lined up as far as that's concerned. That must have been very challenging. Um,
It was now when I see it in retrospect, it was fun. Mandilu, our daughter, was a baby there, so it was an extra thing. The camera system, pretty much every day we needed to go and check. We keep it running at night, and it's the rainforest with like massive thunderstorms and things like that. So at 2 in the morning, waking up the five people in charge, go to unplug the Nest A, Nest B, Nest C. It was a whole team effort. So yeah, so we published one of the really nice studies, the starvation, the chicken starvation, and that one was a big part was the work with the cameras inside the nests. And based on that, starting all questions started to like come up, right? So why they're leaving the third chick die? Why they are not taking care of the second one? And in all those like night longs, just talking with the different team members and collaborators, the question that maybe that's not their own chick always came up. Like why they're feeding the second one this year and not the year before or the other way around. So maybe this one is not theirs. That is why they don't care about this one that much. And all those different theories that you need a huge amount of data and expertise to actually prove.
mhm.
I don't know, Don, if you wanna add something.
Well, I think before we dive into to who's your daddy, might make sense to talk a little bit about trying to save some of those chicks by moving them around. I don't know if you want to say a little bit about that, Gabby.
You're right. That was another big part. It was so traumatizing that I kind of like blocked that from my brain, right? So for 30 years, so the first thing is that coming back to that. my third, fourth year of working in the project with Don. So he was doing some sort of manipulation, trying to save the second chick and the third chick, trying to feed them in the nest, and trying to see if with those feedings the chicks could actually recover and survive and fledge. But we noticed that it was not enough. So somehow they couldn't make it with just 2, 3, 4 more feedings per day. So I had this idea, and Don actually told me, so you need to actually prove this. And it took me 10 years to convince Don. I even convinced the government to give me permission to run the experiment. But Dr. Brightsmith was not convinced. So I
I said
put out.
you're not manipulating nests until you have a hypothesis of what's actually happening. And as she said, 10 years later, she came up with a good one. I'm like, okay, let's do it.
So I studied first just the nesting behavior and tried to understand what they were doing, what was happening. And as soon as I had that, the hypothesis was so okay, I think this is happening. So yeah, Don, you need to explain that part at least.
Okay, so what she came up with was when you have two chicks that hatch right next to each other and they're only a day or two apart, both of them usually survive. But the larger the time difference in hatching between them, the higher the chance that that second one's going to die. So what she came up with was, okay, what if we start moving chicks around so we make broods that have just basically the same age? So we called them foster chicks and foster nests, and we'd pick those birds out. We'd kind of move them around until we had pairs that were about the same age. And sure enough, they survived quite well. But then it got even more interesting. She's like, what happens if instead of having a chick that's 1 day old and 5 day old, where the 1 day old's going to die because that 5-year-old is so much older, what if they were like 20 days old and 25 days old? Would that make a difference? So she started pulling them into captivity, holding them and feeding them until their eyes were open. So that's around 15, 20 days. And then putting that second individual back in the nest so that you had a 20-day-old and a 25-day-old. And she was right. Sure enough, the parents would take those bigger chicks and raise them both out to fledge. So instead of losing one of those birds, the younger one, instead of having it die, we could get both of them to fledge with the parents just because we took one in, fed it up through that difficult time, and put it back in the nest. And that was one of the coolest things we've done down there.
Yeah, I mean, so are you seeing, all right, so is this data that you've got and proving your hypothesis, is there a correlation with parrots in human care, in captivity?
Okay, so if in breeding,
Mhm.
in some situations, you'll still get what's called brood reduction, where they'll hatch 2, 3, 4, but not feed them all. And in that case, I know some people will co-parent, or the other option is you can pull them out, raise them up like we did in Peru. Should be a very similar system. Raise them out until right when their eyes are opening, get them back into the nest, and the parents should pick them back up and feed them, just as they did in the wild.
Yeah, I mean, I find it really interesting. There's a lot of conversation right now about overproducing. And I'm this is a little bit of a tangent, but
That's
and it about, breeding situations where there's overproduction happening. And if there's a situation like that, so I think some people who are not familiar with how parrots breed think that, there are these clutches of multiple eggs and they all are just instantly successful. But it sounds like it took quite a bit of work, Gabby, on your part to have that success. That it wasn't just, oh, well, if I move chick A over here and chick B over here, it's going to be great and they'll be fine and they'll be okay. It takes more than that to have all of them be successful.
Yeah, it's pretty intense, and the reason we developed it as a technique so that it could be used for things like blue-throated macaws or other species where they're highly endangered, and from a conservation perspective, you needed you really needed to get more birds out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this
So,
was the last 3 years of the 10 years of the studies of breeding behavior, right? So it took me 7 years of studies of like showing how are they feeding the chicks, what are they doing to actually come up with a plan to try to make them live. And
mhm,
so it was not just from one year to the other one. It took a lot of study to
yeah.
come up with those plans.
And it sounds like, so is this a case, I'm not a scientist like the two of you. Is this a case of survival of the fittest, for lack of a better way to describe it? Is it the beefier, healthier chick gets fed?
So I've had that question a bunch of times. Do you have any siblings, Robin?
I'm an only.
Okay, so
Like,
you would have done
one.
great even as a macaw. But for example, I'm a fourth chick, and my siblings are much, much older than I am. And that would have been the only failing that would have condemned me to death as a baby macaw. It's the time between hatching that drives the vast majority of it. So, and they hatch out depending on the order they were laid. So it's not even that they're all laid at once and the fastest one hatches first. It's the first one that's laid is the first one that hatched, second laid, second hatch. And there's not much you can do about it. So from a genetics perspective, we have no indication that the fourth chick who hatches 8 days after the first one, guaranteed doomed to die. That chick, there's nothing wrong with it inherently. It just is the fourth chick.
Got it. So it's more timing than fitness.
Right. With when you
Okay.
have a litter of puppies and all come out at about the same time, they're all conceived around the same time, and you have that one little one, that truly is a runt. And that means that there's something about that individual that makes it less apt to survive. It might have genetic issues, it may have other issues, and it's a true runt. But in the macaw nest, now Gabby could disagree with me on some of it because there's a few little subtle differences in fourth egg versus first egg. But for the most part, we
Yeah,
don't have strong evidence that that fourth
yeah,
one is any worse off.
especially because incubation does a lot of things in how healthy the chick hatches. And depending if the mom is a new mom, she's not gonna incubate quite good the third egg when she has two chicks already. But if it's a mom
Mhm.
that actually is like breeding season number 7, number 8, number 10, we had some foster chicks that were third chicks, like half of the experiment were third chicks, and 2 were fourth chicks. And we kidnapped them when they were hatchlings and we put them back 18, 19 days later and they fledged. So mom was old, she was a really good breeder, and she managed to incubate that third, fourth egg properly, and the chick hatched in a good condition, good enough to just be fed for 20 days and be put back in the nest. So it's not like the puppies, as Don was saying in that example.
Mhm. Okay. So, I mean, so it's more about the timing. It's the luck of the draw, depending on what your hatch order is. Okay. Um,
And we
so
do have a student right now who's working a lot on incubation. He's looked at some incubation early on, and he's going to take on this question exactly of what happens at the end of incubation. Are they failing? Do they end up worse because of it? So some more details on that should be coming in a couple years.
interesting.
And
And
what
so,
yes.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, what we found is that mama and dada actually follow the clock of the first chick. So all the parental care is timed with the first hatch. So if the second one hatches 10 days later, he's gonna be fed at the time like he was at 10 days old. And for a hatching, that's deadly, right? We know that. So
Yeah.
they need to be brewed and they need to be fed like really constantly. But if it hatches 2 days after, it's kind of like not the same, but kind of the same. if they hatch in 2 days, the two of them is pretty much the same. But that window of days, the bigger it is, the different the parental care needs to be, and that's the thing that is different, and that's the thing that makes the second, the third, the fourth just perish, because they cannot survive with a specific type of feeding and brooding and everything. And we know that when we breed them, right? So they when they are 3 days and younger, you need to be there changing the temperature, doing the proper care. And mama knows that too, but mama needs to fletch at least one. And the first one is their big bet. If the second one, the third one can kind of like get along with that, great. Otherwise, it's just, yeah.
That's fascinating. I mean, this is really interesting to me. It's, because looking at it from a captive breeding approach, you're feeding a day one, but day one is whatever day that hatches. It's not, okay, today's day one because the first one hatched and I don't, and then a couple days later, yeah, that's really, I'm sorry, I'm just digesting all of this.
When the way she wrote it in her publication was developmental stage. They have to be in a similar developmental stage, which is why when you raise them up and put them back in at 18, 20, 24 days, they're all at that age. The couple days difference doesn't matter so much.
Right.
And they can both survive. So that because you end up pushing them into the same developmental stage.
So did it vary at all dependent on whether it was a natural, was the parenting any different versus with a natural nest cavity versus like a man-made one? Did that skew your data at all?
We pretty much just work with nest boxes. The natural cavities are really tricky to get the chicks out. So it was just too risky to just put one and not be able to get it out the next feeding, because when we place the chicks in the nest, we were feeding them twice per day for the next 5 to 10 days. So we needed to be 100% sure that we could like kidnap the chick again, send it down, feed it, and put it back. And the natural cavities are tricky, are very, very tricky. You need some sort of expertise, and even with that, sometimes you cannot. Mom is there in front of you, and you just cannot.
Yeah.
For the data we were able to cake, which were not the full foster chicks, for the data we're able to get, there's not much difference between natural and artificial. So we think that the natural ecology is working similarly, but as Gabby said, you don't try and hand feed and move around in a natural nest. It's just too hard to work with.
Yeah, yeah. So this is off again on a slight tangent, but so what does the inside of a nest cavity or a nest box look like? It's not pretty.
So if I knew we were going to get this question, I would have sent you my favorite photo.
It's a whole ecosystem inside.
Has an entire ecosystem, because the problem is that there are bats that roost up in the top and they rain poop down on everybody. And then on the bottom, it's kind of like wood chippy stuff on the bottom because the parents chew a bit. And in that wood chippy stuff live the cockroaches and the fly larvae and everything else. So there's one photo from inside a nest that probably has 250 cockroaches of different sizes crawling up around. And if you don't mind, can I gross out your... Go ahead, Gabby.
It's quite interesting because you hear the bats, you know they're there, but you pretty much never find actually that poop, because there's so many insects inside eating that poop that is not there. The roaches are there pretty much all the time. Flies, black flies that ended up being bot flies in the skin of the poor chicks or the parents. And then it's tricky for the person that is checking the nest, because sometimes you hear and you think that the chick hatch, but it's not the chick, it's the bats that are hanging on top of the hole. And then the substrate is actually the inside of the tree that is decomposing, right? So sometimes you go the next breeding season and it's way like boop, and the nest that you were able to get the chicks the year before is impossible to work this year because it got decomposed so much that it's deeper now.
Wow.
So
I'm
I'll tell one really
yeah.
scary story about macaw nest. Before we had the chance to, before we had the permits to pull chicks and move them around, I went and I climbed up to a tree, and it was a huge tree, and there was a big enough hole that I could lower myself down into the nest cavity. I put my hands out on both sides, and I wasn't hitting my arms or anything. I could reach out on both sides, so it was way wider than I am. And as I'm going down, I see a young chick running around in the edge, and it looks like there's like the ground is boiling around it, and I'm confused by that. So I keep going down and down and down, and I finally get to the bottom of this nest cavity, which again is bigger than trash can size on the inside. And I realize that the substrate is so full of roaches that they're actually climbing up and attacking this chick. And by the time we came back the next time, that chick was completely gone. It wasn't being fed well by its parents. It was a third chick, and it was completely consumed by the cockroaches that just lived by the hundreds and hundreds inside that nest. So it was one of the most vivid and disturbing macaw memories that I have.
So this is the stuff that nightmares are made of, Dawn. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
gonna be taking a shower right after. Wow. So, I mean, I'm not advocating for anyone who's keeping parrots in captivity to let things get to that point, but it's not spotless and sparkly and sanitary, right?
Sterile is not a word that I use often in that.
No, and
No.
remember, these macaws need to have this massive immune system to be able to survive there. So when they
Yeah.
in the pre-nesting season, they actually fight for the best nests, and you can see the bites in their faces. Like at least once, I saw like half of the white part was kind of like hanging out,
Hmm.
and they need to be able to recover from that. So infections, whatever they their bodies are like super strong. So
Yeah.
yeah. And in a nest, when mom and dad are doing a good job, the roaches are not around the chick. So they keep the around the chick area without insects. But you can
Wow.
tell if they are not doing a good job and you go and check and the chick has bites, like roaches bites, or they are kind of like triangular, you know, so awesome. They don't know what they are doing here.
Huh.
But yeah,
So, okay. So now, how many pair did you say you have data from? Like 40 pair?
40%, depending on the question. At some, so the number of chicks that we have studying is like over 300, like in the
Hmm.
different questions that we want to answer in different moments in time, right? But yeah,
So,
it's been 25 years and at least 10 nests per year. In our peak years, we had over 40 nests checking in one breeding season. Not all of
okay.
them with chicks and eggs, but at least half of them active.
And so are you keeping genetic records as well with the like each pair, or like how does that work? That seems like another huge task.
It is, especially because you need individuals that you cannot get your hands on. So the parents, they have wings, and so we have a good samples, like sample collection of the chicks. We have a good sample collection of the eggs. We have lots of feathers, and it was a whole learning curve. So at the beginning, we thought that the feathers would be enough, but since like for answering really specific questions, you need high quality material, and they are not like the best. them. So we start collecting just pure blood. So our big genetic DNA library is blood. And we have 3, 6, 10 years. 10 years in our best years when we had our best bets there. We had every single chick sample. In some of the year, just the big ones that the vets were able to sample. But we do have at least 10 years with samples of chicks. And we don't have all the parents. We have females because they're easier to trap in the nest boxes, and a few males. So that's
Okay.
pretty much the main idea was to try to create a genetic library to try to answer deeper questions. And yeah, so it was supposed to be part of my PhD, but it's a CITES 1, a CITES 2, and it needs a huge amount of paperwork to move. Like genetic material samples, like feather samples, blood samples, as you said, it's for genetics. There's a huge amount of work that you need to do.
Okay. So is it the bigger questions? So I mean, you're looking at how the parenting works by who, what's the hatch order and how does that work? And then the where do you go with this from here? What's
So to expand a little on some of the genetic stuff, right now we are starting finally to really dig into some of the genetic questions because we've gotten over 100 samples up to the United States. We've got another 100 or so in process. We have some of the permits waiting on the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service permits now. And what we're looking into at this point is kind of our title for this evening, which is about what's going on with these birds genetically. So people say that macaws, like swans, mate for life, and that they're what is it? Monogamous is a good word for it, and they're faithful, and they don't cheat and sneak around on their mates and the like. But we've got a lot of samples from chicks, and in many cases, we may have two, three or more, 2 or 3 chicks in some of the nests, and with more than one, you can see, well, do we have the same father? If we have info from the mother, is it the same? And we can really start to look at, we know that macaws are socially monogamous. They form these pairs that are loving. Well, sometimes they fight. You'll see them fighting, but they're together all the time, etc. But is that different from sexually monogamous, where they're only mating with each other, and then genetic monogamy, where they only have the chicks in the nest? The proof in the pudding, the paternity test, is do they all really have the same father? And that's one of the big questions we want to look at, because we just don't know that much about it for parrots. Do you want to add something to that, Gabby?
Yeah, and it's really interesting when you are in the world of parrots for so long. We really think they are monogamous. We even say that if the mate dies, that's gonna be the end, right? So they are not gonna search for another mate, and they're just gonna be that widow lonely for the rest of their life. And that was the first question that I got answers from the wild, because they actually don't do that. So we have females that are not nesting with the same mate in different years. So hopefully, in the big sample size that we have, we are going to find chicks from the previous mate. So to see, because the first thing is that, poor female, the male died, so she needed to go and find another male. But so the theory that they were the eternal widows is not a rule in the rainforest. And then we've seen them changing mates too. We've seen at least 1 or 2 pairs that got divorced, and the mate was not dead, but they were just breeding with somebody else. So there's
Yeah,
so
so we've
many
already
of these.
got. Go ahead. we've already got
Oh no, you go.
13 females analyzed, and 2 of the 13 have definitely switched mates, and we've got genetic data for that. Not that I doubt Gabby's eyes or the band numbers we've tried to read. She certainly is good at telling who's the same and who's not. But once we start getting the genetic data, it's going to be a whole lot easier to publish, and it's going to let her back up some of those cool stories that you've got. Do you have any of those stories, Gabby, you want to share about how things got crazy at macaw nests?
Yeah, the one that I really like to share is the big divorce. So we have this huge nest fight, and usually they fight a lot for the best cavities. It was a really nice natural cavity. So we thought, oh, yeah, 2 pairs that are fighting for the nest. But at some point, we noticed that they are not actually, they didn't care much about the hole. They were actually fighting with each other. One of the macaws actually died. We never actually discovered who was it. But at some point of the fight, the male from this pair start printing and following the female of the other pair. And so that's the picture. So the poor guy with the radio collar, that's Mr. Chewy. And he was the wild mate of one of the macaws that was reintroduced in the area. And he was a really good male. So they fledged chicks in multiple seasons. They never had chicks dying in their nest, but somehow she didn't like him much because she switched to this other mate. That was also a reintroduced macaw from another year. So the 2 of them actually were not successful the next breeding season. So for me, it made no sense. So you were successful before, and this poor macaw did everything you asked him to do. So she liked to come to the house and just foraging around the house. And he was wild and he was scared, but he was there with her. So that was the devotion that he had for her. But seems like it was too much for her, and she just decided that she needed a new mate. And she actually died, and we know that she didn't change. She didn't switch back to the previous husband mate or switch to a new one. So eventually, the 2 of them were successful, but they were never. She was never as successful as she was with the white one, with the first mate.
And we know that Mr. Chewy survived, so it wasn't that something happened to him and she switched because of it. The fight happened, and after the fight, we still saw Mr. Chewy hanging around. So
Yeah.
it was a double divorce, murder, and new pairs forming. So it was pretty intense. So when we see things like that, we know that and those are just a few. We only know the identity of a few of the adults. So we know that there's more things hiding in our genetics. And one of the things we haven't talked about yet is, I don't know if people are familiar with the term egg dumping, but that's where a female sneaks in, drops an egg in somebody's nest, and then flies off. And it's actually been documented in a variety of many different bird species. And because of timing, every now and then an egg will show up at the wrong time. We think that our macaws, there is some egg dumping going on, but there's no way we're going to be able to tell that without some good genetic analyses.
And I have a nice
Interesting.
story to add to that. So if you guys follow our social media, so we have a brood of 3 chicks right now, and the 3 of them are about to fledge, so they are pretty much at the end. So this is the first time that we are having a non-manipulated triple bird. And at the beginning of the season, that nest was being used for a different pair, and they actually had eggs. A massive nest fight, and then this pair, the one that is holding the nest now, just managed to remove the other ones, and they laid the eggs. But at some point when we were checking, we couldn't tell if the eggs were from the previous one or from them. And all of a sudden now there's 3 chicks, and it's like, so is the first chick not their own chick? And that is why they're feeding everybody, because they cannot tell which one is theirs.
So, I mean, is it we learn, those of us who aren't scientists, we're told that they can identify their offspring. They can. So is that not true? Is that something that we've just kind of been told, or is it?
Well,
I mean, if you're.
does it
I
matter? And I would say with our cross fostering, we showed the chicks were not theirs, were fed up to fledging.
Mhm.
So our macaws were not rejecting somebody else's chick, because many of our cross fostering were not their own chicks coming back. It was other chicks being put in from other
and it's
nests.
not that they didn't notice. They we know that they can tell, and they're
Yeah.
actually in the cameras when we were placing the new ones. It was like that, the face of what, especially when we switch a robo egg, because that real eggs got predated, and we just left the robo egg there just to keep the hen inside the nest, to give her a chance to keep the nest. And we had this extra chick, and we just said, yeah, so let's put the chick and see what happened. So she actually was biting the egg. So she knew that was not a real egg, but she
Mhm.
kept incubating that. And then we placed a 3 day old chick, and her face was like, what? And she just went down and started printing. And when the male came back, that was really cool. So he went inside the nest box and just out, and the face was like, and again, hmm. And then he disappeared like for 2 hours and came back with a giant crop, like floof. And after
Oh.
that, they decided that that was it. That was the chick they needed.
Hmm.
So they know.
That's.
It was the
But
rainbow chick. It was the best fed chick of the season. He had the best body condition the entire time. It was totally a rainbow baby.
it was
Nice.
so
Very
fat that it shined. So it was so pink, and like it was so fat. But we know that they can tell. But as Don was saying,
nice.
does it matter? So you need one
Yeah.
chick, and maybe it's not just genes, the information that you want to pass, right? We know that in orcas, elephants, there's culture too. So maybe they need some sort of offspring to keep passing that information too.
Yeah. I mean, I used to work with birds of prey, and we had a Eurasian eagle owl that fostered. If we had owlets come in that were orphaned, we would give them to her, and she would foster them, and she was great with them. And they weren't always, the same species. They weren't, but she still kind of, took care of them until they fledged and they could do their own thing. But it's
Mhm.
interesting to see that kind of parental kick in, it does happen. Um, so this is all data that you've collected. Where are we going with this now? What's on the
So
horizon?
now, yeah, so what we're trying to do right now, and I think there's a GoFundMe link down at the bottom there, we're raising little extra funds in order to run full genomes of these scarlet macaws that we've managed to collect samples from in Peru. So we're
Mhm.
sending off over 100 scarlet macaw samples. And because we're going to get full genomes, the very first thing we can check are these questions we've been talking about. Is it the same individual from year to year? Does the female, is she still mating with the same male? Are these chicks all siblings, or is somebody fooling around?
Mhm.
Are we having egg dumping? So those are the first sets of samples. But we're also excited about having over 100 full genomes of scarlet macaws, because then we can start to look at genetic variability and if there are some genes that may be associated with certain characteristics, and
Mhm.
basically create the biggest macaw genetics database that's out there, and allow people to ask a variety of questions about what's going on within this really well studied population. So we're pretty excited about it.
That is exciting. So people can help support with that GoFundMe, um, and that's the link. How else can people help?
For
Duh.
those who are really
We
adventuresome, Gabby, where do they go?
we always need hands in the field. Like if you
Mhm.
have 2 weeks that you want to dedicate to help us collecting that data that we are talking about, we take volunteers from the ones that are actually taking credits to finish up a degree in biology, veterinary medicine, forestry, to the other side of the range, people that like to be outside, watch birds, walk a lot in the forest. We take different type of data. Some of them is just census, taking a seat in front of the cliff, in front of the clay lake. We teach you how to collect the data. We take you there with our boat. If you are much more into physical activity, we can train you how to climb the trees and check the nests. And
Yeah, well, Ron's not helping your case here, Gabby, by telling the cockroaches in the nest cavity story. That's not going to get volunteers.
Well, you don't
We
have to
might have
dig around too much in there. You can stay clear of the cockroaches if you
okay.
have to. So, but yeah,
yes,
You
so
know,
to find
especially if
us,
you're
it's the Macaw Society at Texas A&M website, or you can find us on Facebook as well.
okay, great. So there's so much more I want to talk to you guys about. This is like super exciting, and no offense, Dawn, but I talk to you all the time. Gabby, I want to talk to you about behavior, and so can I make an appointment to have you come back and we'll
sure,
talk
yeah,
about behavior? Because I just, it's like I said in the beginning, that connection that happens between these animals in situ versus animals in captivity, and there's that connection doesn't happen, with your kitten or your puppy or what. It's so wonderful, and I really want people to be able to explore that. So I would love to have you come back and we'll talk about that if that's okay.
sure. Thank you.
um,
Thank you, Robin.
so
Nice. Thank you for
it's
the
I could.
invitation.
And Robin, when you talk about behavior in the wild, etc., there are a lot of different ways for people, um, including what Gabby's offering, to come and do research. But there are a lot of ways to see parrots in the wild. And I would say to any parrot owner, be it monk parakeets in Austin or birds at a clay lake in the southeastern Amazon basin, find a way, if you're a parrot lover, find a way to see a wild parrot in flight, a wild parrot
Mhm.
perching and eating, just to kind of get that other view. Because, as you said, it's a lot more similar than trying to watch a wolf or a bobcat, and which are really hard to see anyhow, and think that
Mhm.
that's the same as your home pet. But with parrots, we're lucky in that way that we can see this same species out interacting in a totally different environment.
Yeah, I remember.
Especially now, yes.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, especially now that we have this extra chance, there's cities that actually have parrots, parrot
Mhm.
populations living there, and it's quite neat to see them. The first thing that you're gonna get when you see them out flying is that the cage is always too small. Your house is too small. Like the whole area is too small to make them happy.
Mhm.
And that's something that if you actually just how do you say that? If you
Internalize,
interiorize that, internalize,
internalize.
that's gonna help your pet parrot to live much better.
Mhm. And I think too, having I've gone to Australia and seen, I saw kakariki, I saw, all different kinds of cockatoos, and just seeing them and seeing some of the behavior and thinking about, okay, how do I replicate? I'm never going to make the forest happen in my house, and but okay, if I can't do that, I've got this bird that is in human care. How do I come close? And I think by studying that behavior, studying that wild behavior, and really trying to come as close as we can, I think it benefits, our parrots that are in our homes. And you're right. I mean, it's never going to be big enough, but if we can supplement that experience in our homes, I think we've got a win. So,
Mhm.
all right. Anything else people you want people to know about your project, the new project, anything?
It's exciting.
Yeah,
I mean, we're really looking forward
you
to seeing what comes out, because what we want to see is Gabby's got all these great stories. How is what she's seen over the years um, match up with these really hardcore analyses of telling us exactly who we were dealing with? And the other thing we can tell is this adult related? Who's he related to? And maybe 4 or 5 years later, the kids start showing up in nearby nests, and we can start to look for genetic neighborhoods. Were they all related to start with? Or how do things start to connect across nests that there's no way we would have ever been able to know without genetics? So look
and
forward to your
there's
support
something that,
and some cool stuff.
yeah, something that we forgot to mention. So it's really what you actually want in a population is high diversity. So that's the way the population, as a population, managed to survive to different bad things that could happen. So the worst is that you have every single pair breeding with the same mate for 20 years because your genetic variability is going to be low. So in my head, it's kind of like contradictory. So I was raised with a parrot, and of course, I did think that they mate for per life. But in a population situation, I don't want that because I want them to have a high genetic diversity so they can overcome issues and different bad things that could happen to them as a population. So I don't know
Yeah.
about you, Don. What do you want?
I'm really curious because I'm just so tired of having people say, "Oh, they made for life. They're they're true to their mates." Blah blah blah. I really just want to just smash that. And we already know that we kind of know the mate for life, but isn't right. But to be able to put a number on it, because I'm such the science nerd, I mean, I want to put a number on it and say, like I said, 2 of 15, certain 2 of 13 certainly weren't holding on. And will we be able to find any instances of them copulating outside the pair? And it will be even more interesting, I think, if they don't, in a way, because if they truly are that faithful, that is absolutely noteworthy, because it's so rare. And I know Nick put up a slide before that even though 95% of birds are socially monogamous, only 25% are genetically monogamous, meaning they're sneaking around on the side with other. It's often the females will kind of sneak off and find a male, either the neighbor or the transients are actually a very common source of extra pair copulations. Males that don't have a mate, don't have a nest, and they're kind of hanging around, and the female in some of the pasturines where they've been able to study it, they'll just kind of sneak off to a nearby perch, copulate, and then that male moves on. So
And I think so. I don't want to get all sappy here, but the diversity in a population is what makes it successful. And I think we're all kind of living that right now. That diversity is what makes us successful. So I think what you're seeing in this population of parrots is something that we kind of need to consider in everyday life. So thank you
I
so
hear you.
much, you guys. This is
Thank you,
great,
Robin.
and I appreciate you coming on. And we had a little bit of technical issues, so the recording will be going up when we're done. It was live on YouTube, but hopefully people will take a look at it, and support the Macaw Society, please. The GoFundMe, the QR code is there. So where do I get a cool shirt like that? How can people get a shirt like you've got on, Gabby, if they want one of those? Do I have to
need to
climb a
come to the
tree?
field. You need to
Yeah,
come to the
actually, yeah,
field.
you
Yeah.
have to climb a tree is pretty much the answer. But we might have to try Parrot Fest next year. Maybe bring a few there for
Yeah,
for
that will do.
people.
All right, but
Yeah.
definitely follow the Macaw Society's social media so you can find out what's going on. And you guys take care. And
Thank
we
you,
have a
Robin.
snowstorm coming here. I don't think you guys have one of those this weekend in Texas. So, all right, we will see you guys soon. And Gabby, I will be in touch, and we can do this again.
Yeah, follow Macaw
Sure.
Society. Gabby does a great job of keeping all sorts of cool news going through there. So I'll give her all the credit for that for certain.
All
Yeah,
right, you
next
guys.
week we're gonna have our 3 chicks flying, hopefully.
All right, take care.
Yay! Thank you, Ruby.